It's 5 o'clock on June 30th. The year is 2021. This is the Carson City Joint Growth Management and Planning Commission meeting. At this time, I want to call the Growth Management Commission to order. And would you call the roll, please?
Chair Borders.
Here.
Vice Chair Wiggins.
Here.
Commissioner Aswine.
Here.
Commissioner Kilgore.
Here.
Commissioner Lloyd. Here. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Preston. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Commissioner Perry, would you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is so nice not to look at everybody through plastic. It's
Protect us from tomatoes, though.
yes, well, maybe. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Growth Management Commission, including any matter that's not specifically included on the agenda. And this is comments for the Growth Management Commission. Are there any comments in the audience? All right. Hearing none, for possible action, we need to approve the minutes of May 26th, 2020 of the Growth Management Commission. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Commissioner Perry may move to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Second. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Agenda item 6A. Hope, is that you? Okay.
What we're going to talk about is the annual growth management report. You talked about this at your meeting of May 26th, and at that meeting, you asked for essentially four things. One, you asked for an understanding of where the 15,000 gallons per day came from, and sort of what the background was on that. You also asked what other uses had received growth management approval. You asked for an understanding of what the residential allocations would be if we had a growth or an increase of 2.5% as opposed to 3% that's being recommended. And we also talked about including policy level criteria that you could use when you're considering a use that would be utilizing more than the 15,000 gallons per day. So why 15,000 gallons per day? In 2016, what the report said at that time was that recent improvements to the water system and additional water resources being produced and delivered from Carson Valley, plus, which essentially was a tie-in with Minden. So you'll remember around 2015, 2016 is when the city had that connection with Minden's water system to address, I think it was the arsenic. And I think with that connection, there was a feeling that the water resources had more availability. Plus, the report also acknowledges that water conservation measures were in place, both with like low flow plumbing fixtures and things like that. So I think it was more an issue of availability as opposed to 15,000 gallons being the right number. Having said that, what does 15,000 gallons per day mean? And Randy Rice, our city engineer, is going to speak to you about what that number means.
Thanks, Hope. Hopefully everyone got their, Randy Rice, city engineer. Hopefully everyone got their late item in their packets. So I wrote a brief letter here trying to address the comments from the last meeting when we were in front of you all. And my thought was to put together a range for the different business uses that we have here in Carson City. So in that memo, I tried to identify the process which Public Works thinks might work for you all when we're bringing new applications forward. I do have a few values that we've been able to put together in the time period, so we have a rough understanding, but it's a very small snapshot of what we have as far as businesses in Carson City. So my recommendation to you all, and certainly open to any advice or opinions that you have about the process, would be to look at these new applications as they come in, dig through our water data that we have as far as use goes, and then put together those estimates. So what is a low estimate for this type of business? What is an average use? And what is a high use throughout the Carson City area? So with that, we put that together and we would break that down into equivalent residential units. So you'd be able to see, okay, we have a business coming forward. They're asking for X amount of gallons per day. What does that mean for us in Carson City? How many ERUs does that equate to, or works? We call it in the memo. So how many gallons does that equate to? And, how many of those are we relating that to as far as, development goes? What would that be equivalent to? So I'll kind of leave it at there and open it up if you have any questions about that process. If you like that process or have recommendations that change that process, we're open to opinions there.
Okay, going on to the other items that you identified. What other uses have received growth management approval? I think Commissioner Lloyd asked for that. I went through the meeting minutes from 2005, and there's only been 11 growth management approvals since 2005. 3 of them were the exact same project, 1400 Old Hot Springs. It kept coming back to you in a different iteration. So that drops us down to 9. And then one of them's not really a single project. It was the Capitol Mall project, which comprised of multiple blocks and multiple buildings. So it's interesting how few you've seen. But that's on page 2 of the staff memo to you. The question of 2.5 versus 3%. The numbers are in the report. It's 692 versus 574. Having said that, staff does recommend that we leave it at 3%. Again, I think market forces are really pacing development more so than the number of residential allocations that are allowed. We've been coming in less than the allowed allocation. I think that's a function of building material supply, labor supply, and the builders are building according to how quickly they can sell as opposed to carrying inventory. We also have adequate services to meet the 3%, so I do recommend that we stay with that. The last one is regarding the policy level criteria, which I kind of feel like of these 4 things is the most important. What I've put into the resolution is that in considering a request for growth management approval of a building permit, that the commission consider the use, if the use will utilize water conservation measures and techniques, and if the use will promote health, welfare, and safety, create quality jobs, or promote tourism. So that was specifically an and an or. So water conservation, you have to demonstrate that you're using water conservation measures. And it can either promote health, welfare, and safety, create quality jobs, or promote tourism. 2 things to speak to on this. One, in writing this, I consider this to be the starting point of a conversation, not the finish line. I gave you some broad stuff. It's open to interpretation, and I give it to you so that you can have your discussion and decide what the recommendation should be to the board. I also want to talk about the fact that it's not super specific. I've heard comments to the effect of, well, what's a quality job? How much does that pay per hour? What does that mean? And the commission, more so than anyone, I think, understands that what you get when you look at these findings, you're interpreting things and you're doing a discretionary review. So let me start with this. There's 2 types of permits. There's a discretionary permit and a ministerial permit. When we have a ministerial permit, it's a yes or a no. So technically, what we could say with these 15,000 gallons per day or more is, can we supply the water, yes or no? If it's a yes, you get it. If it's a no, you don't. That's an objective measure. That's a ministerial approval. Staff can handle a ministerial approval, to be honest with you, because it's just a yes or no based on objective data. A discretionary review means you're applying your own value system and you're interpreting. You are a cross-section of the community. You represent the value system of the community. So you, as a growth management commission, would have to interpret whatever the policy level criteria is, apply your judgment as to whether or not the proposed use is meeting that criteria. So that's kind of what you do every time you look at a project. You're always applying your own value system to discretionary criteria when you're looking at traffic impacts on neighborhoods with special use permits and things like that. So I did want to speak to the fact that this is not objective criteria and it is discretionary criteria. So with that, I would ask that the commission talk more about the policy level criteria and what you'd like to recommend to the board. Then we can incorporate that into the resolution that's in the packet. And I would ask that you then make a recommendation for the board to adopt the resolution, which would then carry forward to the Board of Supervisors, and they would take an action on what the growth management numbers will be for the coming year.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if the commission will indulge, but I would like to go ahead and run at these one at a time and then come to the end. And first off, I love your document. Fix the typo.
Please share.
It's not businesses. But I think to give us something that we can use to make these comparisons with is really terrific for us and outstanding, and it answers so many questions that we've had before when we had to wrestle with this. And I personally, as one, think this is a good document to start using. And then if anybody has any other comments, I'm more than happy to let them have the floor. So that's a good one. All right. Second is the whether it's 2.5% or 3%. All right, I'm the 2.5% guy, but I understand where Hope's coming from, and I'm more than satisfied with the 3% annual growth numbers that were originally proposed. I'm not sure how the rest of the commission feels, but I think that's my feeling is that that's probably where we ought to end up anyway. So, are there any comments on that? All right.
I have a question.
All right.
to-
Mr.
so-
Perry?
So thank you. So indeed, this does put this in context of something, water equivalent residential customers. So understand that well, because that's a number out there on water rights, and that's why we are concerned here of how much water we have. And I think you did accurately hit on a major point there. Carson City has its own water rights. You don't, if you're a developer, you don't have to go acquire them like you do in Reno. So I think in that context, the municipality can be somewhat selective on what they're doing, since people are not bringing them in, and there likely aren't many more of them out there. So I'm trying to understand when this form would be used. Okay, so we have the growth management plan here, and we're going to act on that presumably tonight, and we've added something that Hope went over to say, we want some criteria here in case somebody comes in and wants more than 15,000 gallons a day of water, which, as you likely say here, is 16 acre feet, which is, a chunk of water for our municipality. So when would someone have to fill this out? When they want more than 15,000, or any business that comes in fills it out to give an estimate, or what, that was unclear to me.
No, great question. Thank you, Randy Rice, City Engineer. So the intent that I had moving forward with that is to address new applications for growth management. So anytime it would exceed the threshold of 15,000 gallons per day, staff actually would put that together for you all to review. So in other words, we would dig through our records and have the most recent data that we have available to us through our utility billing department. And we would take that data, crunch the numbers, get you the broadest spectrum we could of what's available within our city, and then allow you to review that as part of your discretionary review.
Okay, so not every business, just when it's going to exceed the threshold.
Correct, and that would be our preference. Just for the board, the commission's information, it is quite user extensive to put that time in to crunch those numbers. It's not as simple as we would have hoped. We have to transfer from one system to another, so that would be our preference.
Okay, so this form basically is now, if we approve this as this is, with these, what was the term, discretionary reviews, this form becomes part of the growth management plan of the process of that when there's a variance requested.
I think this form's a tool to help you understand the context of the request, but this form is not the criteria. I think what Randy's saying is to help you understand the request in front of you vis-a-vis similar businesses. They can start providing that to you going forward so that you can understand how, that widget maker compares to other widget makers.
Okay,
But it's really just a tool. It's not part of growth management.
okay. And it would just be for the potable water system? And my only question there is because we have separate treated effluent that we sell, right, to various, or give, or however we deal with it, right? The golf
Right.
courses, right? And
with-
this would not be part of that, or no?
Right, well, with growth management, the thing that triggers an application coming before the Growth Management Commission is the use of more than 15,000 gallons per day. And that number is in the resolution. You can certainly talk about that number. So when you had applications like that, this would be prepared, but would be limited to analyzing water use and not wastewater,
So just potable water system,
correct?
okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, and it's again, it's an amplification of this first chart that you gave us. When we originally started this, we were gonna supposedly look at a car wash that wanted 15,000 gallons a day, and are being looked at. And it's interesting to see that the other car washes in town use significantly less than that. And that's a piece of information that is, I think, essential for us to make a decision on a future decision. So I guess that leaves us with the resolution. And my only question, Hope, in your resolution is, there's no, I wrote in here quality of life. I know that's really out there and hard to quantify, but to promote health, welfare, safety, or quality of life, or create, I think an or has to go in there also. These are either ors, not summed together. But to promote the health, welfare, safety, or quality of life, or quality jobs, or promote tourism, or something like that, I think is, and I don't know if anybody else has thought about this or has a comment about it. Yes, Commissioner Preston. Wiggins. There's you're gonna,
She had a mask on.
That's right.
She might
She's-
have looked like me.
yes. And I'd like to also note that Commissioner Wiggins, or Commissioner Preston is present. All right.
All right.
Commissioner Wiggins, go ahead.
Commissioner Wiggins for the record. On that topic, I thought of one thing that would be nice out of those four things listed. I thought recreation. So where would that fit in this? In addition to what you said, quality of life or that. How about something like not be detrimental? Or maybe your quality of life, I think, kind of covers it as a catch-all. So that's all I
What do you want to say, or promotes recreational opportunities?
maybe.
Okay.
I think we have to be careful with too many ors, and I think they all have to be positive.
Yeah, I was just using recreation as an example. Where could that fit in here?
Where
Well,
could
it's
that-
not tourism. It's not necessarily creating jobs. Health, maybe. I don't know. I like what you said, Chair.
Or to promote recreation and tourism.
Yeah?
You're gonna wordsmith it.
Sure.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the commission? Yeah. Commissioner Eswine.
Commissioner Eswine for the record. I'm going to just read what I have written down here. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that we can continue to grow when the scientific evidence is showing that we are in a long-term drought.
Turn your mic on.
I thought I did.
Please back up a step.
Okay. Commissioner Eswine for the record. I am uncomfortable with the idea that we can continue to grow when the scientific evidence shows that we are in a long-term drought and the availability of water is not guaranteed. While the Carson Eagle Valley aquifer may currently be stable, we do not know what the long-term effect of weather and climate change will be on the availability of water. I would like to know, or I'd like to see, the threshold reduced back to the 7,500 gallons per day. And that with the requirement that to exceed this maximum, the subject would have to have a special review and requirements for the utilization of the water.
I would say, I don't disagree with you, but I would say if we can decide on the wording, then we can go back and look at the issue of the quantity.
I thought we were talking about the whole thing.
Oh, no, I was just talking about that one paragraph, but I certainly agree with you that we need to decide that that's the right number, and we haven't addressed that yet.
Okay.
Commissioner, which one do you want to be?
I want
Press-
to know how to turn this thing on. If you
The,
don't-
up in the top right-hand corner, there's a little mic. Push the little mic on your top right-hand corner of your,
Thank you. I think one of the things that I'd like to do on this promote health, safety, recreation, I'd also like to put in here something about, because I think it can be considered almost commercial, quasi-residential, some infilling with some higher densities. Meaning the more of a multifamily type of thing. Because one of the things that's coming up with me and as a real estate agent, which I'm finding really frustrating right now, is there's only so many houses on the market. We're in bidding wars. People are paying more money than appraised value. And people come to me and they say, why does that happen? And I told them, I said, Carson City, we're very lucky in the fact that people had the foresight to actually buy a lot of our open spaces, create a lot of recreational opportunities, but doing that, they actually took that land off the market, period. It will never be built on. We have conservation easements in some different areas. And so we only have a footprint in the basin, period. And what I would like to see is, I would like to see more multifamily. And that's something that I don't know if we consider that as the commercial, if we're doing that type of a thing, because I think that needs to be definitely addressed, because I'm working on this more of a regional type of thing. And Carson City, people cannot afford to live at the lake anymore. The workforce housing is coming down the hill, and it's coming into this area. There's no place for people to do it, and people are competing, and they can't afford the different rents. And so I'm looking at this saying, I'd like to encourage this. And so I look at some of this stuff and they say, okay, I don't want to limit housing / commercial multifamily because of how many permits we could do. I'd like to encourage that instead in the higher density, so, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
go ahead.
Just for clarification, when we're looking at growth management, we have two buckets, if you will. One bucket's the residential, and the residential includes the single-family residential and the multifamily. So when we're working in that bucket, we're looking at the total number of allocations. And as is in the report that you all looked at in May, we're not getting close. So there's nothing in that bucket of growth management that's restricting residential development. The second bucket, which is sort of the one we're talking about, says, okay, everything that's not residential, you get to have X number of gallons per day, and you're going to talk about that. And if you use more than X number of gallons per day, you're this big water user. And you need to come to the Growth Management Commission and get permission to have a building permit. So I think what Commissioner Preston's comments were is the residential bucket as opposed to the bucket we're talking about now.
Hope I'd like to clarify that because we show as our large commercial one as being this RV park, which we actually converted into individual units that could be sold, correct?
The lots it did become a subdivision is correct, but it also had a limit of, I believe it was 180 days. And to be an RV park, you can have up to 30 days as an allowed use or up to 180 days with a special use permit. But it was always a transient use. It was never permanent housing. It's actually not lawful in Carson City to reside, to live in a RV as your dwelling.
Is it, I guess, is it acceptable for us or legal for us to change the allocation from 15,000?
What's before you is the resolution, and we have notice for this meeting that you are reviewing the number of gallons per day, the number of residential allocations, and you're considering criteria that you may apply when you're considering the non-residential. So yes, you're lawful if you talk about that.
All right, Commissioner Eswine?
So what happens if a business comes in and comes in under the threshold? And then 2 years later, it starts using more water. What's the penalty to do that, other than just getting the water?
I'm not prepared to tell you what would happen. I would suspect we would say, you need to come to the Growth Management Commission. We don't have the authority to have allowed you to establish. But what's happening is a couple things. One, our engineering department is getting technical reports regarding water use before the building permit's issued. What you all do as the Growth Management Commission is you authorize the issuance of a building permit if the water use is more than 15,000 gallons per day or whatever that number is. So the question you're posing is, well, what if they have their building permit already, they're built, they're occupied, and they're using more water? And I can't say that we have a mechanism in place because technically this is a precursor to that building permit.
No, I think that's been something that's on staff's mind as well. We're working through that process now. I don't know, Dan, if you have anything else to add, but that is something that's happened in the past that we're looking into. How do we retroactively go back and correct those instances? And there's a handful that we know of now that we're working on.
Comment, Mr. Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Perry, at the last meeting, we had all of the different agencies, utilities comment on the growth management plan. And the water was just the one that we said, okay, let's take a little bit, tighter look at this. But Mr. Quagliari's presentation, the utilities manager, was quite insightful in the context that, because I took it home and actually asked him to send it to me so I could read it again. From 2008 to 2020, we actually declined in potable water consumption in Carson City by 23%, from 12,500 acre feet to 9,500. That was a significant number for me. So conservation measures are working, and that's all the time, all the while the city was growing, because the 3-day-a-week watering, the things that were out there had a big impact, and that really struck with me. But the idea here of some criteria which you've put in, and I'm fine with. I was fine with what Chuck said too, on just having a trigger here to say, okay, you want to use more than 16 acre feet of water a year, because we have to approve that. What is it that the business does, and how does it impact the city? Right, because we don't want to give away our water rights. And realistically, when somebody says, "Okay, I'm coming in, I'm going to build," and they get to hook up to the water system, they're not paying anything for the water rights, and then they start using them. That's water that limits growth sometime in the future when we have the build out in 2040 or whatever, when we hit that higher number. So I'm satisfied with it. I think the document's good, and I realized there was a couple edits in there, but I think this gives us the ability to, when somebody does come in and wants more, just like this one that's pending now with the car wash, to take a hard look at it. That's really all the reason for why we did this, that I recall.
Is there any way in the special use permit for growth management, we can require that the person applying for the special use permit report to us for a period of 3 years their actual water consumption?
You can condition a growth management approval, and you have conditioned them in the past. So you certainly can, if you authorize a growth management request to to ask for that annual review for a period of 3 years or whatever.
Well,
You
that-
certainly
that-
could.
It seems to me that that gives us an ability then to look at the actual use, and if they were, packing the numbers and now they're not, they're in violation then of the special use permit.
Not every growth management request will have a special use permit.
No,
So
no,
they're
no,
two-
I'm
oh,
just saying
okay.
those over the threshold. That's what we're talking about.
Right, so as part, what you're issuing is a growth management approval, you're acting as the Growth Management Commission, and you issue a growth management approval so the person can have a building permit. Now typically, they're gonna have startup time, right? So I think 3 years is good, because 1 year, 2 years, maybe you're not getting a good data set. And certainly, you can, as a practice, when you have those in front of you, you can ask for that.
Okay. What's the commission's feeling on Commissioner Eswine's number?
Well,
Commissioner Eswine,
I have another comment on what
I'll let you start. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I just want to respond to what Hope just said. What would be the, if we did find that they were exceeding their capacity, could we revoke their growth management authorization?
Not, you technically could, but realistically, what the growth management approval is you're approving the building permit. Again, so they've already built. So I think what you could do is, I'm just thinking this through, work with them on conservation efforts to figure out how to use less water. But I think this is something staff needs to talk about more internally. We really haven't vetted that topic, and you guys are bringing up a really good point. And I think we at a staff level have to start discussing, Randy's mentioned that he's identified situations where this has happened. I'm not aware of those situations. There may be something where there is a discretionary approval from a use perspective, and we do have teeth, not as the Growth Management Commission, but as the Planning Commission to do something. So I think we can certainly look at that. But as staff level, I don't think we're prepared to give you a recommendation on how to specifically address that. I think the issues become clearer in this meeting.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Just a quick question for staff. So do we have, and you can say no because I did not prep you for this question, but do we have an idea of how many businesses would fall under the 7,500 gallons per day to the 15,000 gallons per day?
Yeah, great question. We, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very limited snapshot of our entire city here, but I do have a few categories that we can kind of look at. As far as 7,500 goes, I would say, we're looking at probably 4 to 5 categories right now. So things like shopping center, potentially, hotel, motel, car wash at a gas station. Those would be kind of similar uses that would exceed that 7,500 that we've identified at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I kind of feel like we've gone a long way in a short period of time. And I don't know that I disagree with Commissioner Eswine as his number, but I think if we approve the 15,000 this year and now with the data that we're going to generate, we'll have a better picture a year from now. Because it's an arbitrary number, and I would rather have a number based on something that we can stand up and defend rather than an arbitrary number. And what I was proposing then is to leave it at 15,000 this year and have the staff come back at the next growth management annual review and give us a better number.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see those numbers.
Yeah.
And have it broken down by business category. And because right now, we're just sort of guessing, first of all, that we've got the water. And then second, that 15,000 gallon, 15,000 is what the right number is for these exceptions to the general rule. I'd really like to see what the general usage is, and then determine what who should then get covered, or who we should review based upon that.
If I could just add, Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So I think that that's a great recommendation, and we honestly, we would have loved to bring all that to you guys now. It's just, you can imagine you have 19,000 meters across the city and processing years and years of data. It takes some time. But I think that's certainly something we can do, and even, we could show kind of like a bell curve distribution on some of those land uses so you can have a good feel for, not only with the land use category, what are your low and highs, but you could also see maybe what are like your 75th percentile or, those types of statistical analysis that might help kind of you understand a little better kind of where in the city, 15,000 falls or 7,500 falls. So we can certainly do that. It just takes a little time.
Mr. Chair, if I can just let the commission know, we do need, per the code, we need to be able to bring this resolution to the board in July. So what I would suggest, because the board has to consider it in July, what I've written down for the policy level criteria is consider if the use utilizes water conservation measures and techniques, and if the use will promote health, welfare, safety, or quality of life, or create quality jobs, or promote recreation and tourism. What we can also do is staff will work with each other on what to do when we do run into situations where there is a violation, and come back and talk to the Growth Management Commission about that, as well as identify those uses and the water demand. We don't have to wait till your annual review. Once that information is ready, we can ask for a meeting of the Growth Management Commission, and we can report what we've discovered, any recommendations, things like that, and keep the conversation going. I think that it's been a really informative conversation. I think I agree with the chair. I think we're making really interesting progress on this, but staff's just not ready to speak to some of these items.
Okay. Commissioner Preston?
I had one more question on this, especially when I heard Dan talk. If we're going to be looking at the water, I would also like to be looking at the discharge for the sewer to see if we have any businesses that are high users of the sewer too. The reason is that we're, working on that aspect of it. And because I think some people, use the water and they put it in a situation where it can be put in a recharge. And some of them are going back and using our waste management plant. So I just like to, kind of get an idea of who's actually using that. Typically, you figure out sewer usage on the water usage, but there has to be some that are separated because of basically, lawns, grains, this and that, and going back into the aquifer. So if you have any way to deal with that, when you do this other report, if there's something you could do on that.
I appreciate the comment. Sewer's a little bit more challenging because obviously the discharge isn't metered at the parcel level, but we can definitely kind of look like broad picture and kind of hopefully kind of analyze, maybe give you some data on that.
Okay. Are there any further comments? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the draft resolution with the following changes to page 3, first paragraph, and I'm going to ask Hope to read those into the record.
Okay, number 6 in the resolution that starts on page 2 and goes on to page 3 will read, in considering applications in response to subsection 5, the Growth Management Commission shall consider if the use utilizes water conservation measures and techniques. Sorry, I have to go back to my notes. And if the use will promote health, welfare, and safety or quality of life, or create quality jobs, or promote recreation and tourism.
End of motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Lloyd? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will
Yes.
articulate to the board the conversation that was had here and that you have posed the questions concerning people utilizing more water than the Growth Management Commission authorized or avoiding the Growth Management Commission but using water that would have been subject to review by Growth Management Commission, as well as talk to them about the idea of understanding the 15,000 gallons better and the analysis that Public Works is going to do for you.
Okay. And I'd also like to mention to them the fact that, you know, that in Mr. Rice's report, 16 acre feet's $150,000. That's a value added.
Yes, and his report is per the record and
Yeah.
will be provided to the board.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question or comment to the
Okay.
staff. At the last meeting, I don't remember which department submitted them, but the hydrographs were really helpful. And it would be really good to have those in our staff report for the next growth management meeting.
Okay. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Growth Management Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action will be taken on the matter raised under this item of the agenda. Is there any public comment at this time on growth management? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn the growth management meeting?
So moved.
Second? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Carson City Planning Commission. Would you please call the roll?
Chair Borders,
Present?
Vice Chair Wiggins, Commissioner Aswine, Commissioner Kilgore, Commissioner Lloyd, Commissioner Perry,
Here.
Commissioner Preston. A quorum's present.
Thank you. The members of the public are invited to address the commission at this time on comment on any matter that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Are there any public comment on non-agendized items for the Planning Commission? Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of May 26, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections or comments on the minutes? I have a motion.
Yes, I do have a comment there. No,
Mr.
on,
Perry.
Page 2, number 5, says for possible action, approval of the minutes of May 27th, 2020. I was just scratching my head a little bit saying, what, is that a date that, what did I miss there? Or is that just an incorrect date?
No, that's the approval of the growth
Oh,
management
the
meeting
last
from the
growth,
last
okay.
year.
Okay, so sorry. It was just confusing.
All right, having said that, then, are you moving to accept?
I
the
move
minutes?
to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All right. The real Commissioner Wiggins seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 13, LU 2021-0182, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to construct an ancillary structure that will result in the cumulative area of an accessory structure exceeding 75% of the size of the primary building and 5% of the parcel size on a property zoned single-family 1 acre located at 5180 Silver Sage Drive, APN 009-231-08. Heather, is that you?
That's me, Heather
All right.
Ferris. The subject property is approximately 1.79 acres in size and currently improved with a 3,080 square foot home with attached garage, a 96 square foot shed, a 378 square foot carport, and a 579 square foot detached garage. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3,000 square foot detached shop. This will result in the cumulative square footage of accessory structures being 131% of the primary building and the coverage of the detached structures being 5.2% of the lot area. Per municipal code, since the cumulative square footage of accessory structures exceeds 75% of the size of the primary structure and 5% of the lot, a special use permit is required. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve a special use permit upon making each of the required findings in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval, subject to the conditions included in your staff report. No public comment has been received regarding this project. I'm available for questions, and I believe the applicant, Robert Amundson, is here and may wish to address the commission.
Okay,
Also, before I send it back over to you, Chair, you had requested a comparison between the current code and your proposed changes to 18.05.055. So by comparison, the changes that you recommended would result in this particular situation, a special use permit being required because the total square footage of all accessory structures exceeds 1,000 square feet and 100% of the size of the primary structure.
okay, thank you. Questions for staff? Heather, I have one, that's all.
Okay.
The engineering department division recommended that the driveway for the proposed garage be paved. Now, the applicant has proposed, and that his driveways that he has out there are not paved, they're all gravel. And there is no condition of approval for a paved driveway, so how do we reconcile all?
So I believe it's a requirement of the code, but Guillermo Munoz from engineering is here, and he can probably speak to that.
Okay,
Guillermo Munoz, Development Engineering, for the record. So that is part of our municipal code, development standards, section 12.12.2, residential driveway access. Driveways will be constructed of a Portland cement concrete in urban areas and Portland cement concrete or asphalt concrete in rural areas. I believe this property was approved prior to this code, and we're just bringing it into current compliance.
okay, but does that mean he has to pave all his driveways and all the entryways into his house?
He'll have to pave each accessway off of the road to the garage.
Okay, well, that's not in the conditions of approval.
So because it is a requirement of the code, we would not typically include that as a condition
I
of
see.
approval.
Okay.
It is a requirement at the time of building permit.
Okay, all right. Are there any other comment or questions for staff? Is the applicant here? Welcome to the hot box. Are you familiar with the recommended conditions of approval for the permit?
No, I wasn't, sir.
You haven't seen the recommendations yet?
Not for the paving of the driveway.
No, it's not a recommendation on there. That's why I was asking. The conditions of approval of your special use permit do not address the paving of the driveway.
No, they don't.
I know, but it is because of code, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You will have to pave the driveway. We can approve the special use permit.
Okay. Well, if I have no choice but to pave the driveway to do the building, then I have no choice.
Commissioner Wiggins?
Yeah, and in here it says pave the driveway to the existing garage. Is that the garage attached to the house?
Actually, there is no
But this-
attached.
Oh, this is for staff.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that he might, it's his requirement. That's why I'm
Okay.
asking him.
So Guillermo Munoz, for the record. Yes, it would be to both the existing residence and the new proposed structure. So both accessways are required to be paved.
Okay, I personally kind of saw that as a little unfair that he has to upgrade something that's not even close to where this new shop is. I understand the requirements for the new shop having to meet the city requirements, but retroactively to everything on his property, I don't know. I saw that as a little onerous.
So this particular section of code has two functions primarily. One is to protect the edge of pavement on our existing roads and to reduce track out, which ends up in our storm drain system. So whenever we can, we try to bring things into compliance, like our ADA standards. I would look at that like this.
Randy Rice, city engineer for the record, so certainly understand your concern here. I think we're trying to be as fair and equitable as we've been in the past with other applicants, and this is how we've treated this case, is that once the building permit comes in to us, then they were then required to that's the catalyst to bring that up to code. And so in this instance, 12.12.2 would require the driveway to the structure.
The driveway to the structure.
The driveway is needed for aprons essentially accessing the structure from the right of way. And in this instance, they have two.
Well, he has kind of he's got a semicircle, and then he's gonna build his new shop, and that'll be a third driveway.
Yeah, so because the other access does not necessarily go to a parking structure where vehicles are known to be using, we would feel comfortable only requiring the two. That's why there's not a third paving requirement for that third apron, since it is a circle driveway.
So he can build his shop and put a gravel driveway into his new shop, but he's gonna have to pave his driveway?
I think the condition that we're asking for is for paving to the shop and paving to the existing detached garage.
Okay. All right. Yep. Yes.
So I guess what we can't, this has to be remedied some way. I definitely feel like this is done completely unfairly. There's no way that both structures should have to be paved to. That's ridiculous. To retroactively go back and there's no way to, it can't be right. Something can be done.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Earlier on the last item, when you were the Growth Management Commission, we talked about discretionary versus ministerial permitting. So just by illustration, let's say the issue was a setback issue or meeting the building code. We wouldn't come to you and say, oh, let's have a condition of approval that they have to meet the building code. They just have to.
Yeah.
That's ministerial.
Okay.
What you're talking about is something, it's akin to engineering looking at compliance with drainage standards. This is in the engineering code. So if this item never came before you for a special use permit, engineering would be applying their code the exact same way. This isn't part of a discretionary decision. So I think the engineering department is hearing your comments. I'm sure they're going to look at this to make sure they're being reasonable, as the city engineer said. But it's really not before the planning commission.
Okay. Commissioner Preston?
Yeah, I have a question, and this is just more of a thing that did just trying to understand this. Because it looks like this APN number is 009231, 0.8, and that is to this owner, but then it looks like there were two other APNs that were put in this, and it looks like there may have been a boundary line adjustment.
There was.
Okay, and then the parcel number that is shown on the special use permit is one of them, is one of the inactive on the, for this, on the boundary line adjustment that was done several months ago. So I'm just asking that this be corrected, or it shows that we're going for a special use permit on the now parcel 009231-08.
Yeah.
So Heather Ferris, again for the record. So I believe in the staff report, it lists 00923108, 5180 Silver Sage Drive. I believe that's the correct
Okay.
APN and address.
Yeah. Well, what she's saying is on here, it doesn't say that.
So that's his application, and he probably had his previous APNs
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
prior to the
Okay.
the lot line deletion.
Just so we're all talking about the same piece of
Yes.
property.
Right.
Commissioner Aswan?
Yeah, there's nothing that would prohibit him from realigning both driveways to have one curb cut, would there?
There's no curb out there.
Randy Rice, city engineer.
An apron at the pavement, so.
I think that would be a fair approach to see what he came up with, and if they could both be used in that instance, I think that would be a fair use of that.
Yeah, there's only, well, there is basically one,
Sir, is your mic on?
there's basically only one apron going into that side of the property. And there is a ditch for drainage that would be directly in front of the shop that's proposed. So there is no apron there. So paving up to the existing garage, which is the detached garage, there is no attached garage. The previous owner, back in the 80s, changed that into a living, part of the living area. So there's only a detached garage. So the approach directly goes into that. So paving over to the new structure would not be that much more of a hindrance,
Okay.
just more cost.
Well, it sounds like I haven't heard anybody objecting to you building your shop, so. And I do think that the building department's gonna be willing to work with you on the paving thing. So is there any other comments for staff or for the applicant?
Yes, one
Oh,
for
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Thank you for coming
You
in,
didn't raise your
Mr.
hand.
Admonson. Did I say that?
Amundsen.
Amundsen, okay, thank you. So what are you going to use the shop for?
Basically, it's gonna be RV storage. I have several cars, a tractor that I purchased after I bought this property 6 months ago, for my, travel trailer, and some shop work, some woodwork and whatever, but mainly just as a shop for storing my stuff, so I'm not looking like, Sanford and Sons junkyard.
Good. And you're not planning on finishing it off and making it a detached dwelling?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Good, thank you.
Is there any further questions or discussion? Motion? Commissioner Wiggins?
I'll do a motion, but before I do that, I'd like to say, when I looked at this, I got scared for anyone that goes in for a permit, because now the city's gonna retroactively apply a lot of things. I saw they looked at sewer and all these sort of things. So I don't know, cautionary note that if you go to the city for something, they might find something else out. And I just hope the city's reasonable when they look at these things, and, making this whole street ADA compliant and sidewalk and gutter and attaching to sewer. He just wanted to build a shed on his property. So I would just say to staff, try and be reasonable, and take that into consideration when applying the standards, the current standards retroactively. I kind of like the grandfather clause in some of these things. So that being said, I would like to make a motion. I move to approve special use permit LU-2021-0182 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Is there a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Eswine. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
sir. 13B, LU 2021-00187, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow a temporary tract sales office, model homes, parking area, and advertising signage on property zoned multifamily duplex located at 1350, 1356, 1362, 1368, 1374, and 1380 Little Lane, APN 004-391-01, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Heather.
Heather Fariskin for the record. The tentative map for Little Lane Village subdivision was approved in 2019, and the final map for Phase 1 of the subdivision was recorded last year. So on the screen, the light orange dashed line indicates the boundaries of the subdivision, and Phase 1 are the smaller lots there. And then the proposed model homes and parking area are within the boundaries of the darker orange area there. The applicant is now seeking approval of a special use permit for a temporary sales office with model homes and associated parking and signage. The applicant is proposing 4 model homes with parking on 2 nearby lots and 4 32-square-foot signs. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve a special use permit upon making each of the required findings in the affirmative. Staff has made all 7 findings and is recommending approval, subject to the conditions included in your staff report. And no public comment has been received regarding this project. I'm available for questions, and Mr. Bates is also here, available for questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Nope. The condition 10 about the signs, it says flags, banners, and other advertising signage. We're only seeing signs. And
So-
I do know that there's some opposition to feather flags and those kinds of things. So will these signage requirements meet the current sign ordinance? And
So the signs that are proposed here are in excess of what's allowed, and then there's additional signage that is allowed, as noted here in condition 10. So the signage, flags and banners for real estate, there are specific limitations there. So they could have some additional signs, but it's within the limitations that are already in the code.
Okay, all right. Any other further questions for staff? Gotcha. The applicant is here. Have you seen the recommendations for approval, sir? Do you have any, is your mic on?
Yes, I've seen them.
All right, are they acceptable to you?
Yes.
You have any further comments to the
I do
commission?
I do
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, for the benefit of the record, that was Fred Bates speaking. He is the applicant.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Bates.
Oh, yeah.
All right, are there any further questions for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Eswine?
I just have a comment.
All right,
And I mentioned this to Heather when I picked up my package. You know, the requirement for a special use permit for a model home just seems excessive to me. You know, we know that when you do a development that you're gonna have, you're gonna have a sales office. And I just would like to see when we look at, the Title 17 or Title 18, whichever one it would come under, that we consider that as a possibility.
okay.
Commissioner Wiggins, for the record, I second that, or we should have this, maybe staff could urge the applicant to put that in the original special use permit or subdivision, or is there some other mechanism?
Right, what we can do in the interim as we wait for Title 18 to get updated is as we have these, well, typically it's a tentative map, so it actually is a different instrument. But if we do have special use permit, then we can ask if they're gonna have a model home and to just include it so that you can do it at one time.
Do it at one time? Okay. Good idea. Any further discussion? Is there a motion? All right,
I move to approve special use permit LU-2021-0187 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
is there a second? Commissioner Wiggins seconds. For any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, sir. Item 13C, U 9394-67, discussion and possible action regarding a request for an investigation by the Community Development Director of a special use permit U 9394-67 for the Empire Ranch Golf Course located in the Agricultural Zoning District at 1875 Fairway, APN 010581-15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On June 28, 1994, special use permit 93-94-67, a special use permit for Empire Ranch Golf Course was approved subject to conditions. If we fast forward to 2021, on March 22nd, 2021, a stop work notice for grading without a permit was issued. On April 22nd, 2021, a second stop work notice for grading without a permit while there was a stop work notice in place had been issued. Also on April 22nd, 2021, the applicant for the flat fields applied for a grading permit. On April 28th, 2021, the application was deemed deficient, and on that same day, the Planning Commission considered the special use permit for the flat fields. Since the Planning Commission considered the application for the special use permit for the flat fields, I'll note that the Planning Commission, at the request of the applicant, did continue that matter to a date uncertain. Numerous phone calls, emails, videos, and photos from area residents advising the flat field areas under construction have been received by staff. Staff has also visited the site and observed machinery and the stockpiling of dirt. Per Municipal Code 1802-095, the Commission, upon its own motion, can request that the director investigate the conduct of an applicant to determine whether grounds for revocation or reexamination of any special use permit exist. So what you can do today is you can do nothing, or you can request that the director investigate the special use permit for Empire Ranch. What that would mean is I would review the special use permit, review the conditions of approval associated with that special use permit, determine what is occurring on the site, whether or not it's in compliance with the special use permit and with the city's, codes and regulations. And then I would come back and report to the commission. At that point, the commission could decide based on that report whether or not you want to schedule a show cause hearing to have the applicant come before you to explain or to show cause why there shouldn't be a reexamination or a revocation of the special use permit. But the first step of it's actually a 4-step process, would be that you would decide whether or not to request an investigation. Sometimes you had me investigate what was it? It wasn't asphalt. It was it Brunswick Materials, I think, and they were closing the gate. And I came back with the report, and there was no action taken. So the mere request for an investigation doesn't mean it will go any further than that. It just means we want more information. And at that point, it's my job to go get that information and report back. And so with that, I will give it back to the commission.
Okay. This is basically an administrative procedure that we're talking about today. Okay. Is there any discussion from the commission? Is there a motion? Pardon? Oh, comments from the public? I'm sorry. Are you the designated spokesman? All right. You're going to have to turn your mic on, sir.
How's that?
Okay.
Okay. Commissioners,
Please identify yourself.
my name is Glenn Conant. Excuse me. I'm okay. My name is Glenn Conant. I am an Empire Ranch resident. I'm speaking today in support of the audit review of the current special use permit for the golf course. Unfortunately, I think the violation they may have committed is due to the construction of the flat fields. I spoke with Frank Mansell from the FEMA Region 9 office in San Francisco, which covers Carson City. I did this in an effort to learn more about the rules that apply to the Superfund site. He clarified that FEMA deals with the flood part of it and EPA deals with the contamination part. He made the FEMA part simple to understand. He said there were only 3 things that are critical for the floodplain part. No fill dirt be brought in from an outside source, elevation change is limited to 12 inches, and an engineering report is a given. It must be completed before any extensive work can be done to these sites. He then suggested that I look at city ordinances as they are the jurisdiction that manages and enforces these rules. After our conversation, I looked at the permit for the golf course and discovered in it City Code 12.09.080, starting at 6A, as mentioned in the permit. When I went to that code, I found all of these rules listed. Not part of, but 100% of this code was violated, and the residents wonder why no action has been taken. Tons of fill dirt was added. The elevation changed, but it can't be determined how much because there was never a proper engineering report. Excuse me. Proper engineering report completed. This is just the FEMA part also on these. I'll mention the EPA information, which at some point really needs to be discussed. If these flat fields are going to be considered, I see a huge liability for the city dealing with the EPA issues. It's not the residents' desire to lose the golf course. Should it be determined the special use permit was violated due to these flat fields being built, the residents would be more than happy to offer a suggestion how to ensure this doesn't happen anymore. I would like to comment one other item. At the last meeting at the very end, a comment was made, I think by the chair, but the video can't always tell who's talking, that you heard the flat fields have been built. Well, the new grass has been planted and the fields are being watered. So yes, they are built and they are being promoted. They had a soccer fundraiser offering tours of the new flat fields. And if you have a smartphone or an iPhone and you Google Battleborn football, and I copied mine out to show you, they are located at 5101 Morgan Mill Road, which is the flat fields. So with that, I guess they haven't done the chalk lines, they haven't put out the outhouses or had a game, but other than that, they appear to be built. All this was done without any permits or any required reports or action taken for the violation. So I guess we residents just have to sit and watch. It's frustrating. From our point of view, this seems like a process with little or no enforcement and one that seems to go on and on and on. Thank you. That's it.
Any other comments? All right.
My name is Russ Wilson. I'm a resident of the Empire Ranch community. A while back, I gave a personal address where I made an appeal to deny the original application. I would now ask the commission start an investigation, audit, and/or review of the special use permit for the Empire Ranch Golf Course, and particularly the flat fields that were constructed. I previously gave a dramatic and alarming appeal, which was full of potential issues I saw with the original application to modify the existing special use permit for flat fields. After researching and talking to just about everyone I could, I find that my dramatic appeal was more than justified. I talked to both FEMA and the federal EPA, and federal violations have occurred. I interviewed various golf players, long-term residents, as well as looked over aerial maps, and wetlands were destroyed without authorization. I talked to the State Business and Licensing Office and the operations of Sport Logic. The entity promoting the build and use of the fields have been conducting business within the state of Nevada without a license. The applicant, at last known, refuses to comply, and the State Attorney General's office may now be involved. The flat fields were built without first conducting an initial land survey, an environmental impact report, or an initial engineering report, a must before any construction begins. We now have flat fields, which have dramatically impacted a managed floodplain, and we have no idea how it will affect the surrounding community, an area known to be prone to flooding with homes just a few feet away. We also know that because outside fill was used to grade the area, that it increased the mercury contamination and violated City Code 12.09.080. In the past few days, I was surprised to learn that a stop work notice was issued both on March 22nd and then again on April 22nd, but the work continued without consequence. The original application was proposed to be rejected for a host of concerns by your own professional staff, but you allowed the applicant to submit additional documents for the approval of this application. At first, because I'm against it, I was disappointed, but thinking about it, I actually think that was a commendable action by the commission because it gave the opportunity for the applicant to come back, involve the community, address concerns, and see if maybe we were just, being Chicken Little, or if there's actual real problems to be concerned. The applicant did not do that, did not involve the community, and continued to build the flat fields anyways. Everything done to the regards of this field construction has been incomplete, haphazard, unprofessional, and violating multiple laws. Now the fields are built, and we have hope that things will have to be all right when the floods come. The applicant has shown his lack of regard for the safety and well-being of the community. The players who would use the fields, the contaminated fields, it is an EPA Superfund site, and shown contempt for this commission by ignoring requests for additional information and finishing the construction by ignoring 2 stop work permits. When will this end? That's how I will end this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
For the record, Dwight Millard, representing Empire Ranch. I'm not here to talk about the flat fields. That is on your agenda at a future time if it goes forward. I'm here to talk about primarily the idea of investigating the special use permit, and I'm not here to talk against your investigation if you feel that that is in the best interest of the community. May I just tell you that your former mayor, Bob Kroll, said it well. There's an elephant in the room, and nobody wants to talk about the elephant. And the elephant is really the water that is allocated by priority to Empire Ranch Golf Course, and the city has need and issue of that water. We spent approximately 5 years permitting this golf course, $500,000 in permits and planning, 8.5 to build it. It would seem very remiss to me that the Planning Commission would go to the elevation of saying, we're going to revoke that special use permit for that golf course, and you need to find another use for it. I just find that to be a far reach for something that may not even move forward. You haven't given permission for the flat fields. Those flat fields can easily be used on the golf course as a sod farm or a driving range. And contrary to some of the information that's been presented, that was pretty much flat, just the way it was when we started in there and rolled back the turf. So we really aren't hiding anything. About 1.5 years ago, we had a special event there with soccer, and we obtained a special use permit from this department for that weekend to do it, just to see if it was a viable tactic. So all I'm saying is that we want to be careful when we poke this elephant, that it doesn't go upstream for us, and in fact, something else happens to the golf course. It's revoked. I think the neighbors have a cause, and they're welcome to their opinion, and I don't mind them expressing it. It's not the first time I've been to the Planning Commission. But having said that, I just want to make sure that everybody gets what they really think is what is fair and equitable out of it, and that we don't end up creating something that causes more problems than we want. So we're not against the investigation if the Planning Commission feels that'll do something. I don't know if the Planning Commission is aware, but we have been issued a summons, and we have appeared in court on the fact that we did a misdemeanor, and I'm there in the court, but we haven't been proven guilty. There has been no trial, so there's really not a character flaw yet that you can come after me for till after that. And I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you.
I just want to get you to reiterate the fact that, so that area, you knew it very well before it was graded?
Yes, I knew it very well.
Okay.
It's a very, very flat area. The reason that we pulled the turf off the existing turf, it was high in alkali, very high. We've never been able to get any good grass to grow there. So we rolled back the turf, used the existing sprinkler system that's there. We didn't go grade it we did grade enough to roll the turf off. We did do that. And then we put on new seed. We didn't put any new dirt in there at all. We just planted the seed and that was it.
So I just,
Wait,
so.
wait. We're taking testimony, we're not, this is nothing to, so,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to be clear. So is for you were very familiar with this site before construction began?
Yes.
Okay. And you say that, and it was very flat, you're saying, so it couldn't have changed more than a foot?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right.
Now,
Just wanted-
when you say more than a foot,
Right,
I mean, we did a whole flat field and we rolled the turf off.
right. I mean,
And-
so personally, I mean, I've only been here over 30 years and crawled through those bushes many times, but I can say I didn't know that they were so contaminated. I wish I had known a little more clearly how dangerous it was to be playing down there, but I don't remember them being very flat, so.
It was,
just wanted-
that was very flat. However, I will help you with another thing, and that is that we involved EPA, and if you investigate, that will all be brought up. EPA and DEP were involved with us, and NDEP, once the sod had been rolled back, asked us to replant it quickly as to keep the mercury contamination down. And for your information, there is traces of mercury, but you'd have to eat almost 3 dump truck loads to get enough to do damage.
Right, and so it's, and it's simply not just me, because, because of the outcry from the public, of course, I've been going and watching that site regularly. I live very, very close by. So I've been able to stop by and see exactly what's been going on there for the last couple months. And so firsthand, my experience, I can go with it, and I don't need to, no further questions.
The only, and I might give one more piece of information. We have, since the last planning commission, been in contact with the city to see if they had any property that would be better suited for soccer, and that we would be willing to make a trade, or, because we have other properties that they might be. For example, we have Sea Hill, which is 500 acres for open space and a park. Hey, trade that for 1 acre for a soccer field somewhere? I can't get them too excited about it yet, but I've been pushing. If the neighbors wanted to help us, what they would do is bug the city and say, hey, let's find an alternate place to put in a soccer field that these kids can play on.
okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The purpose of what we're trying to do here is to decide whether or not we want to investigate it. We're not going to try and adjudicate it or make a decision. So all we're trying to do is to take comment from the public right now to decide to make a decision on whether or not we want our planning director to do an investigation. So,
Mr. Chair, for the clarity of the record, I think Mr. Millard referenced a special use permit for soccer fields. I think he meant a temporary use permit. So I just want the record to be clear on that. Thank you.
are there any further discussion? Any other comments from the public? Well, we're not going to get into a question and answer, but go ahead.
I think it's probably a yes or no.
Please make sure the mic is on and identify yourself. and
My
sign.
name is Jeff Serber. I'm an Empire Ranch resident. And I just wanted to know whether there was any contact with the Planning Commission or anybody else prior to the work that began on the golf course. Or whether it just happened and nobody.
You mean the
asked
flat
anyone.
fields?
Yes,
Okay.
but that's my only comment. I just wondered whether anybody ever came to anybody at the city and said, hey, we have an idea, we might want to build some flat field, or whether equipment just showed up and started working.
Okay. Sure.
In general, when somebody's contemplating an improvement, they do talk to the city staff. In this case, the applicant who came forward for a special use permit did speak with the city staff, and we advised him he would need a special use permit. He did not speak with the planning commission in advance of the meeting, to the best of my knowledge.
All right. Any other comments? Any other comment from the commission? Is there a motion? Commissioner Preston, are you, okay, go ahead. Turn your mic on, please.
Okay, I move to request the director to investigate special use permit U-93/94-67.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Lloyd. Is there any further discussion? No. No.
What can we expect from staff?
I'll try to have it's okay, you can call me staff. I'll try to have a report or at least an update for you for your next meeting. I'll get with Mr. Millard and we'll talk.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would add one thing to that, because I heard reference to some orders by NDEP and so forth. So I think that should be part of the investigation, is other agencies at the state level or whatever, EPA or FEMA, that have some input on this, because that sounds like it's part of the picture. Thank you.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Was there an amendment to the motion, Mr. Chair?
No,
Oh,
no. Commissioner Curry just made a comment.
thank you. I just wanted to make sure there was no amendment.
No. All right. Turn the page. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the last board meeting, they introduced an ordinance for the planned unit development on Longview, that you had reviewed the tentative map on that. They also approved the final map for Blackstone Ranch Phase 1, which is the first tentative map for the Lampa Ranch specific plan area. So that construction's been going on with those channels over there at Lampa Ranch, and Ryder Homes is excited to get going and building houses out there. For your next meeting, we have a handful of items. There's a special use permit request for a community counseling congregate care facility over on Long Street, East Long, I should say. There's a major special use permit for a single-family attached residence over on College Parkway. There's a storage building, construction warehouse that's a special use permit because of the height over on State Street, which is across from Mills Landing. You'll have a tentative map, a 61-lot subdivision on East Nye, which is kind of across from the airport. And then you're going to have a tentative map for Silver Oak. It's a 52 attached single-family residences over on College Parkway. So it's technically not part of Silver Oak. It's where the doctor's offices are on College Parkway.
Oh, okay.
It's over there. So 2 tentative maps, one with 52 lots, one with 61, and then 3 special use permits.
And will they count-
And I guess a
will they count
report.
in the next year or this year?
I beg your pardon?
Which year will those count in?
We do the allocation when they apply for their building permit, and the allocations go on calendar year.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for staff or?
I do.
uh,
The ones that are the special use permits for the multifamily, are these, how many special use permits have been for those particular ones? Because we talked about the fact that people are continuing to do the special use permits and like, almost like a placeholder without pulling a permit.
Oh.
So the special use permit for the, is for the single-family attached residences for the Silver Oak 52 attached single-family. That's what yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, it's farther up the street. It's not on the roundabout.
It's near the park.
sorry, I was visualizing. It's by the park at Silver Oak. It's not by GS Richards.
Yeah. It's by the Sierra Place.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of, as Sierra Place. Thank you.
Anything else? The public is invited at this time to comment on or discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action will be taken on the matter raised under this item of the agenda. Is there any comment? Yes, sir.
Glenn Conant for the record here. I'd like to take a minute and explain this NDEP report for the golf course. It is a preliminary report. I talked to David Freeman, who's NDEP, and that report covers a few things. They did do soil samples, but there is another method that's much more extensive called method, and I'm making this number up, I have it at home, it's like method number 7531. And he said that they have to do that report done by an independent lab to really get the true results of the mercury contamination. They have a risk assessment in that report that talks about a kid eating some dirt or something. That is what Sarah Watson is the manager over EPA, federal level, San Francisco. I have all their information. I'll be happy to give it to Hope.
Okay.
She explained this to me. That is what she called a residential test. That liken it to a kid coming to your house and playing soccer in the backyard. Okay? That is nothing of what we're talking about here. There are no risk assessment studies done for a contact sport being played on a mercury contaminated soil. I asked her directly, hypothetical. I have a 10-year-old kid, I sign up for this, whether it be 6 months or 5 years. Over a period of time, he becomes very sick because their face is put into the ground, they have open wounds, goes to the hospital, and they discover mercury contamination. The first problem is the parents will not have even been notified. But the other part of that is there's no study. So what do you say to that parent? Oh, gee, we know this was discussed and it was possibly a safety hazard, but we didn't think it was that bad, so we passed it anyway, and sorry your kid got sick. Mercury poisoning is very serious. If you look it up, it can cause long-term effects. I mean, death is extreme, but there are long-term health effects. So I'm certain that that parent, if that were to happen, is going to come after the city, deep pockets first, for approving it. There needs to, at the very least, be a risk assessment done based off of this scenario. But that's what that example was in the NDEP report. The other problem is what, even though they're claiming, they told me personally on the phone, it's a requirement, they only made it a recommendation. But they said that that method of more extensive study of the mercury contamination has to be done.
Okay.
So I wanted to just make that clear. I have all that information. I have contact with Hope. I'll give her the name, phone numbers of all these people.
Okay, that's why we did what we did tonight,
Right.
okay? And if you have
So-
information to give her, please
Yes.
do. And-
All right, thank you.
Because it's our position, I believe, to make an informed decision, not a knee-jerk reaction. And everything that we can provide, in all the information that Hope can gather will allow us to do that. So thank you. Okay? Is there anything else? Motion to adjourn? So moved. There's a second? Motion by Mr. Perry, second by Commissioner Estwine. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
you.